Hello everyone, I am Jupewan and glad to have your time to show our presentation today. Okay, let's get started. I will start with an introduction. In terms of introduction, I would like to show you some background information, company segmentations, and the main issue about Mr. DIY. Okay, let's move on to the background. Mr. DIY first opened one store on Jalan Tuanku Abdul Rahman in July 2005 and has now grown to become the largest home improvement retailer in the region with stores across Malaysia. This is because Mr. DIY serves more than 80 million customers yearly at all stores in Malaysia and Brunei as well as their online store. Most Mr. DIY stores encompass about average 10,000 square feet per store, providing a comfortable and wholesome family shopping experience. Also, Mr. DIY offers an average of 18,000 variety of products at always low prices. Hence, Mr. DIY offers a wide range of products for everyone's needs at lower prices and convenient at all its stores nationwide. Moreover, there are two segmentations in Mr. DIY. One of the segmentation, which is product segmentation. In each of the Mr. DIY store, the products provided are in 10 categories, such as hardware, household, electrical, furnishing, car accessory, stationery and sports, toys, gift, computer and mobile accessories, and jewelry and cosmetics. On the other hand, geographic segmentation. For instance, Mr. DIY is organized into two reportable segments based on their geographical locations, such as in Malaysia and Brunei. Next, the main issue of Mr. DIY. Despite the uncertainty and breadth of the COVID-19 shock, Mr. DIY has planned to expand into international markets. Mr. DIY is targeting to open 120 Mr. DIY stores in 2022, bringing the total number of Mr. DIY stores in Thailand to more than 500 by year-end. In addition, Mr. DIY also plans to open a new distribution center in northern Thailand this year. Hence, the analysis and strategy plan presented with this report help Mr. DIY its expansion at international markets and responding to sudden changes in the environment, such as COVID-19 pandemic.
Mission Statement Analysis. Mr. DIY vision statement is to be the largest home improvement retailer in Malaysia and Brunei. Meanwhile, Mr. DIY mission statement is to create a globally recognized retail brand, to offer a diverse retail experience catering to the different customer segments, to maintain a wide variety of good quality, value for money items, thereby holding true to our motto of always low prices. This is the mission analysis for Mr. DIY. From the table, we can see that Mr. DIY statement lacks the components of technology, public image, and employees. Mr. DIY could have better designed its vision statement by including the elements of technology they use, concern of public image, and employees. This is the proposed mission statement for Mr. DIY after including the elements of technology, concern of public image, and employees. Financial analysis. We calculated each ratio into four types of key financial ratio. The first one is liquidity ratio. The current ratio and quick ratio, among other indicators, are used in the liquidity ratio to calculate a company's capacity to meet debt obligations and its margin of safety. Mr. DIY in terms of liquidity ratio is doing well in 2021 compared to the year 2020. The second one is leverage ratio. A leverage ratio is any of a number of financial metrics that examine the amount of capital that comes from debt or evaluate a company's capacity to satisfy its financial obligations. Mr. DIY in terms of leverage ratio is doing well in 2021 compared to the year 2020. The third one is activity ratio. An activity ratio is a type of financial metric that indicates how efficiently a company is leveraging the assets on its balance sheet to generate revenues and cash. Mr. DIY in terms of activity ratio is doing well in 2021 compared to the year 2020. The last one is profitability ratio. Profitability ratios are a class of financial measurements that are used to evaluate a company's capacity to generate profits in relation to its revenue, operating costs, balance sheet assets, or shareholders' equity over time. Mr. DIY needs to improve their profitability ratio since it did not show much improvement from the year 2020. IFE matrix. This is the key internal factors for strengths with the weight and rating for each factor. Meanwhile, this is the key internal factors for weaknesses with the weight and rating for each factor. From the IFE matrix that conducted for Mr. DIY, the table shows that Mr. DIY reported a higher net profit for the fourth quarter that ended on December 31st, 2021 is one of the most crucial elements for Mr. DIY business to succeed. Note that Mr. DIY is doing best. On the group established Mr. DIY Plus, a 30,000 square foot giant retail store at Mid Valley Mega Mall, and Mr. DIY has declared a quarterly interim dividend of approximately 56.5 million for fourth quarter financial year 2021. The contribution of sales from Mr. DIY's e-commerce websites are a serious problem. On a scale of 1 to 4, Mr. DIY obtains a total weighted score of 2.52, which indicates that there is undoubtedly space for development in terms of operations, strategies, policies, and procedures.
My name is Zara Alfia and I would like to explain about the external environmental analysis of Mr. DIY. First of all, we have Porter's 5 forces of Mr. DIY. Porter's 5 forces is used in the assessment of the competitive position of the business in the macro environment. And first power factors rivalry among existing competitors is high in Mr. DIY because Mr. DIY has many competitors. Also, competitors offer a diverse range of products. Second, bargaining power of supplier of Mr. DIY is low. The switch from one supplier to another is expected to be minor. Because Mr. DIY has a large number of suppliers and manufacturers available to companies all over the world. Third, bargaining power of consumer is high due to the high number of competitors in the market. Also, the prices and quality will affect customers' loyalty to the brand. And next, potential entry of new competitors is low. Mr. DIY already controls the majority of the retail business in Malaysia. And last, potential development of substitute products is high because all of the products sold in Mr. DIY do not require high technology threshold. Next is past-like analysis. A past-like analysis is an acronym for a tool used to identify the macro or the external forces facing a company. Past-like itself is combined of 7 letters: P, political, economic, social, technological, legal, environment, and competitors. And before implementing any strategy or a tactical plan, it is critical to conduct a situational analysis, of which the past-like analysis is a component. This analysis should be repeated on regular basis to identify change in the macro environment. And as we can see in the table, we have first the past-like analysis conducted on Mr. DIY. First, political. We have opportunities and threat. Openness to threat and investment has been instrumental in employment creation and income growth, with about 40% of jobs in Malaysia linked to export activities. And the threat is global market continue to be violent amidst concern over the emerging Russia-Ukraine war, rising interest rates from inflation fears and prevailing COVID-19 cases. And also we have economic. Global equity markets continued their rebound towards at the end of 2022, and the threat is the International Monetary Fund has downgraded the growth forecast, with the world economy expected to shrink by 4.4% in 2020. And also we have social. The increase of buyers in customer became because the trend of TikTok and other social media, and the threat is due to the pandemic, the customer are more purposeful when they come to buy products. Have technology like Touch and Go and Mr. DIY are working together to improve their customer experience. But the threat is the use of the same technology from competitors makes it difficult for Mr. DIY to differentiate itself. 5. Legal. Having ABC policies to prevent bribery action, and the threat is discrimination of employee against people with different races. 6. Natural environment. In FY 2021, the total diesel consumption intensity of Mr. DIY's delivery fleet in Malaysia was 27.5 liters per 1,000 transactions, equivalent to 74.1 kg CO2 e per 1,000 transactions. And the threat is climate change is becoming an increasingly salient issue and source of structural changes. Last is competitors. The opportunity is like Daiso sells most of its product at 5.70 each. That's quite pricey compared to Mr. DIY. And the threat is EcoShop is committed to providing customers with affordable and quality products. Daiso provides the same range of prices with different products, and Daiso is mainly in Japanese theme, as the products are more quality and more choice for customers. Okay, next is EFE matrix, or external factor evaluation matrix. This is a method of strategic management that used for assessment of current business conditions. The EFE matrix is, or EV matrix is a good tool to visualize and prioritize the opportunities and threats that a business is facing. As well we can see, based on the matrix table, the total wage score is 3.28, which is above 2.50, and this indicates that Mr. DIY strategies are quite effective in exploiting their opportunities or defending against their threats. Mr. DIY should improve their strategies in order to obtain a strong position in the market and increase their profit time by time. The highest wage score is 0.28. Under the opportunity is Mr. DIY should also focus on its expansion globally. The highest wage score of 0.28 under the threat is COVID-19 pandemic. The fact is given much weight because COVID-19 pandemic has had a profound impact on the retail industry, as consumer sentiment fell and businesses were required to close during the movement control order imposed by the government. Mr. DIY was similarly affected, as they had to close almost all of their stores. And then they should identify the issues and challenges so that improvement can be made to their strategies. Have a clear strategic plan. Next is the competitive profile. The competitive profile matrix, or CPM, is a tool that compares a company and its competitors and reveals their relative strengths and weaknesses. Based on the CPM table, Mr. DIY overall score is 3.28, higher than other competitors like Daiso, with overall score is 1.42, and EcoShop with overall score is 2.49. The range of each critical success factor is obtained from various analyses such as stock prices analysis, financial statements, and brand loyalty. The highest part in the weight section is brand reputation and online presence as two factors that are quite important to increase profits amidst the high increase in customer interest in technology. Mr. DIY scored high in these two sections, namely 0.6 and 0.4, and the lowest score is the low cost structure section is 0.12. Thank you.
My name is Li Zixin. So I will continue to the next part, which is matching strategies. Matching strategies focus on generating feasible alternative strategies by aligning key external and also internal factors. The technique included SWOT metrics, space metric, BCG metric, IE metrics, and also the grand strategy metric. SWOT analysis is a strategic planning and also strategic management technique used to help a person or organization to identify their strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat related to the business competition or project planning. So for this, the strength, weakness, opportunity, threat matrix will help managers to develop 4 types of strategies, which is first, SO strategies. Strength opportunity strategy use a firm's internal strength to take advantage of the external opportunities. For example, Mr. DIY should inventing more own branded product or also known as the white label product to offer their customer with a higher price to quality value proposition and eco-friendly products. Besides, Mr. DIY should also implement branding strategy to increase their public image and also maintain their customer loyalty. Next, for the weaknesses opportunity strategies, it aims at improving the internal weaknesses by taking advantage of the external opportunities. For instance, Mr. DIY should enhance the design of its online store's website so that it is more user-friendly to attract the customer. It should also promote and educate the customer to purchase through online store by provide free shipping voucher and also the discount voucher. For the ST strategies, it uses the firm's strengths to avoid or reduce the impact of the external threats. For example, Mr. DIY should focus on the sales on online platform to reduce the operational disruption of MCO. They should also focus on the COVID-19 related development product, such as COVID-19 test kit, face mask, and face shield to increase their sales volume. The last one is WT strategies. It used defensive tactics directed at reducing internal weaknesses and avoiding external threats. For example, Mr. DIY should make sure each employee is given the code of ethics training to prevent similar issue from happening again. The issue here is the racial discrimination issue claimed by one of the Mr. DIY customer. Next, they should also make sure all their warehouse is provided with all necessary license and cert to avoid any compliance risks.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. So I'm Mizwan Wikwan. We'll continue this presentation with space metrics. So basically, strategic position and action evaluation metrics, or better known as space metrics, is a strategic management tool that focus on strategy creation, which have get high reliability for considering macroeconomic, microeconomic, and financial factors in the process of determining the position of the organization. So if we can see from the table here, internal strategic dimension, the total average for CP is negative 1.5 and the total average for financial position is positive 3.6. And for the external strategic dimension, the total average for industry position is 4, and the stability position, the total average is negative 2.8. So after we calculate the x and y axis, we can plot the graph. Based on the coordinate obtained from the space matrix, it shows that Mr. DIY has appeared to be in the quadrant 1, which is aggressive strategy. It indicates the company has a strong financial background that is a dominating factor in their industry. Thus, Mr. DIY is able to implement the aggressive strategy consisting of market penetration, market development, diversification, and vertical integration defensive.
Next, I will be continuing for the BCG metric. A BCG metric is a model used to analyze a business product to aid with long-term strategic planning. This metric helps the company to identify new growth opportunity and decide how they should invest for the future. Most companies offer a wide variety of products, but some deliver greater returns than others. This diagram shows the sales by product category of Mr. DIY. It is extracted from Mr. DIY annual report for the financial year 2021. The data is being analyzed into the table below. From the table below, we can see that the household and furnishing product category has the higher sales volume with the higher sales volume growth rate, which is 5.5%, while for the stationery and sport product category has the lower sales percentage and also the lower sales volume growth rate, which is 0.4%. So using the sales by product categories and the sales volume growth rate, the BCG metric is contrast as above. The household and furnishing are in the stars quadrant as they are the Mr. DIY top long-term growth and profitability business. So Mr. DIY should focus on investing in this product category in order to retain or improve their dominant position. As shown on the table above, household and furnishing have significantly increased in sales and leads to a higher growth rate of the markets as compared with the previous year. So Mr. DIY can consider to use the integration strategy, for example, forward, backward, and horizontal integration, or intensive strategies such as market penetration, market development, and also product development in this product category. Besides, for electrical, is placed on the question mark quadrant. Generally, in this quadrant, this product category has significant development potential with a lower market share. The cash need for electrical category is high, but its cash generation is low. However, in this product category, it is quickly expanding, so it has the potential to become stars in a high growth industry. So Mr. DIY should also determine ways to strengthen its position by intensive strategy, for example, market penetration, market development, or product development, or also to sell them by divestiture strategy. Apart from that, hardware and other product category are in the cash cow quadrants. Cash cow are the business unit or product that have a larger market share but with a little growth potential. So Mr. DIY can consider to use product development or diversification strategy for the strong cash cows. Lastly, the stationery and sports are in the dot quadrants because of its low growing rate and also small market shares. Division in the dots quadrant are typically break-even without earning or spending much money. They are typically seen as a financial track since business invests money in them without receiving great return. So in this situation, Mr. DIY could consider use divestment strategy if this product category is found to be loss-making or non-performing. Mr. DIY can also consider using divestiture strategy by selling a part of the organization.
So next is the internal external matrix, and we have used the product segmentation in this analysis. So the IE matrix is a strategic management tool commonly used to analyze the current position of the divisions and suggest the strategies for the future. In short, this matrix is based on an analysis of internal and external business factors, which are combined into one suggestive model as a continuation of the EFE and IFE matrix models. So the table shows of the 5 products with the revenue for 2021, the profit for 2021, the IFE and EFE scores. And this is the IFE and EFE score for household and furnishing, with the total of internal factor is 3.3 and the total of external factors is 3.33. Next is the IFE and EFE score for hardware, which the total for the internal factors is 1.96 and the total for external factors is 3.27. And IFE and EFE score for electrical, the total for internal factors is 3.26 and the total for external factor is 2.78. IFE and EFE score for stationery and sports, with the total of internal factor is 1.7 and the total of external factor is 2.78. And last is the IFE and EFE score for others, which the internal factor is 2.8 and the external factor is 2.6. After that, we can plot the IE matrix using the total of IFE and AFE, with the size of pie is indicates the sales and the head is indicate the profit. So according to the IE matrix analysis, household and furnishing and electrical are in the 1 and 4 cell, which means this product are included in the grow and buy region, while the whole and maintain region is filled by hardware and hardest products in the 3rd and 5th cell respectively, and the remaining product, which is stationery and sports, belongs to Arbus or diverse region in the 6th cell with the lowest IFE and EFE weighted score. Hence, the strategy must be implemented based on the position of the products in the IE matrix. And for the last matching strategies is Grand Strategy Matrix. Basically, Grand Strategy Matrix is a useful instrument used by a business to create an alternative strategy. This matrix helps the company adopt the best set of strategies based on the current growth and competitive position of the company. However, this matrix is not a standalone strategy as it relies strongly from the previous findings of input and matching stage, which need to be presented and analyzed before deciding which quadrant fits the company best. By referring to the previous matrix and analysis, it indicates that Mr. DIY absolutely obtains a strong competitive as well as significant market growth. Hence, the company belongs to the first quadrant due to the growing market globally, and the company is the one of leading companies in the industry in line with other strong competitors. Thus, the most suitable strategies to be implemented by Mr. DIY are market penetration, market development, product development, backward, forward, and horizontal integration.
Okay, now I'm going to explain about the decision stage and strategy implementation of Mr. DIY, where there are 3 alternative strategies recommended for Mr. DIY. So the first one is the market development, where Mr. DIY can explore new market through other market development strategies such as the geographic expansion. The second alternative strategy is the product development. So it can also consider product development where it can deliver the new product or services or even improve the existing one for its customers. And the third one is the related diversification, where it can consider of having related diversification to achieve a greater profitability. And this is the QSPM analysis results based on the internal and external factors. So as we can see, for the opportunities for market development, it has 1.68 score. For product development, it has 1.19 scores, and the related diversification, it has 1.45 scores. So for the tracks for market development, it has 1.85. And for the product development, it has 1.83, and the related diversification, it has 1.89. So for the strength, under the market development, it has 1.68 score. Under the product development, it has 1.30 score, and under the related diversification, it has 1.50 score. And the weaknesses, the market development, it has 1.22 scores, and the product development, it has 1.13 scores, and the related diversification, it has 1.25 score. So the total attractiveness score for market development is 6.43, and for the product development, it is 5.45, and for the related diversification, it is 6.09. So based on the analysis results, the most recommended alternative strategy for Mr. DIY is market development, and the second one goes to related diversification, and the last one, it goes to product development. So QSPM matrix that we have conducted, it is very essential as it can allow us to evaluate the alternative strategies objectively to determine the most suitable strategy that is going to be implemented. So based on the QSPM matrix analysis that has been performed, it can be concluded that the most suitable strategy for Mr. DIY is the market development, because it obtains the highest total attractiveness score, which is 6.43. So this strategy, it is a market development it is a growth strategy that involves selling the existing products or services to new groups of customers. So where a segmentation of analysis of the existing market and the market that should be pursued should be. And there are some suggestion of policies for Mr. DIY. As we all know, the pandemic of COVID-19, it has impacted most of the business growth in Malaysia especially, and every business entity is now slowly starting to get back into the business as usual after being hit hard by the pandemic. Okay, since Mr. DIY is a place where everyone loves going to look for affordable house hardware appliances and other varieties of products, so the place, it can get really crowded at times. So the first policy that Mr. DIY should have taken is it needs to implement a control and prevention of COVID-19 policy. So this policy is very crucial at this moment in order to curb the spread of the coronavirus, which not just put our nation economy but also the whole world economy into a disaster state. So by having this policy, the customers especially can be protected to the maximum level, and not only them but the employees, especially those who have to work on the front line, can also be protected as they serve the main front service to the customers and the base of the growth of Mr. DIY. And then the second policy is Mr. DIY should also consider of having a customer loyalty policy. Even though Mr. DIY is having an aggressive expansion strategy that spend more of their business location, but up until now there is no any customers loyalty program. So if Mr. DIY wants to be differentiated and seen as a unique retail entity, you can consider of having this. You can consider having this policy. This is because the nearest competitors of Mr. DIY such as EcoShop and Daiso are also still not having this policy in running their business. So if Mr. DIY managed to have this policy, it can retain its existing customers, but at the same time it can attract new customers. And the third policy is the company, it can implement customer and employee complaint policy. So this policy, it covers both customers and employees, since these two are really crucial and has intangible value to the success of Mr. DIY. So customers, especially who have problem with their purchases, it should be immediately channeled to the key person in charge, because there are times where customers do not get fair treatment for their complaint as it is not channeled into the proper way. So what Mr. DIY can do is to have a complaint counter in every store rather than depending on only online complaint methods such as through the email. So this is because online complaints usually it will take up days to be resolved, and it can create negative value for the customers. So meanwhile, the employees should also be able to channel their complaints, especially when it comes to unfair treatment for the job, such as harassment from customers, co-workers, and also their management. So last but not least, we also would like to suggest Mr. DIY to have extensive quality control policy to demonstrate its commitment to a continual improvement for the products that are being sold in order to attract new customer and also retain the existing one. This is because there is a stigma being spreaded that people should not buy from Mr. DIY, as the products do not really have good quality and it only can be used for a limited time before it is broken and a new replacement is needed. So this kind of stigma, it can affect the image and reputation of the brand, and it is getting easier for this stigma to be circulated among the public as we are now living in a digital era, and any issue can go viral at any moment. So this stigma, it does not mean it is not true, as it is proven that there are certain products from Mr. DIY which do not meet the quality expectation. So to resolve this issue, Mr. DIY can focus on quality improvement under this policy, especially when it comes to choosing the suppliers and also the products to be sourced to Mr. DIY. So if Mr. DIY fails to comply with the policy, it will tarnish the brand in the long term, as it can affect the trust among the customers. So there are some guidelines Mr. DIY can follow in implementing this policy. First of all, it must regularly communicate with customers, because it can create a positive interaction between customers and the sales representative. And then also it can build customer loyalty, improve customer retention, create customers as advocates, and it can create the opportunity to use customer feedback for the future for the further improvement. And there are some actions to be executed by Mr. DIY to go with their market development strategy. So the first action that Mr. DIY should do is to start doing geographic expansion to new markets, especially if the market is still not saturated with the same line competitor. So as for now, Mr. DIY has already expanded its business to Thailand, Brunei, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines, Cambodia, and India. So although Mr. DIY is planning to open more stores in Malaysia, Mr. DIY should also consider opening their business in new region, especially China, which has a strong economy, and China it is the best country in terms of purchasing power parity. So besides that, Turkey is also one of the suitable countries for Mr. DIY to expand their business. So with market of 84.34 million people, Turkey will be expected to bring more revenues for Mr. DIY, because this Turkey can act as the bridge to the West, where West people can actually start getting to know more about the Mr. DIY brand. So the second action that can help with the expansion plan is the merger and acquisition of the current business entity, which is in the same line with Mr. DIY. So under this action, Mr. DIY can start exploring and researching the current business entities in the area in which they intend to expand. So for example, if there is an entity which is not doing well in terms of financial aspects, Mr. DIY can use this opportunity to merge or acquire the entity in order to start expanding in the market effectively. And the third action is that Mr. DIY it can have their own shopping platform as the main online selling platform, rather than only relying on Shopee and Lazada only. This is because it has a strong customer base, and it is one of recognized brand that most everyone will know. So although online platforms such as Shopee and Lazada provide Mr. DIY with a lot of customers, but there is still a cost that will be incurred, as they still have to pay for the platform provider. So in order to maximize their revenues and increase the profit, Mr. DIY should start building an online application as its main online platform and start selling on their own platform. So this application is the most effective and reliable platform compared to selling on websites as what they have now. So the customized application, it can also provide Mr. DIY with customers database and their purchasing activities. So through this, Mr. DIY can engage more with customers, but at the same time it can maintain good relationships with them, as they can provide feedback and complain easily. So this will help Mr. DIY to do their research in customers' behavior to help them with their future strategic planning and projection. Okay. The fourth action is in order to expand more market and become more competitive among all the competitors, Mr. DIY can also improve their cost by lowering the cost and set themselves apart from the competitors. So in order to lower the cost, Mr. DIY could come up with a product development strategy where it can create its own product line, so they can have their own production manufacturing center, rather than relying only on suppliers. This is because a lot of competitors will join the same industry, which is this retailing industry. So there could be possibilities where the suppliers might put pressure on Mr. DIY by raising prices, lowering their quality, or reducing the availability of the product, which then will increase the bargaining power of suppliers. So by having their own production facility, so Mr. DIY can set the price accordingly and can maintain the quality of the products without being pressured by the suppliers. So if the production seems to exceed the demand of the consumers, of the customers in Malaysia, so Mr. DIY can also start becoming an exporter rather than importer to the untouched market and available market that is in need of the products produced by Mr. DIY. So the last action is to be a more cost-effective oriented company. So we suggest Mr. DIY to start establishing robotic warehouse in the market where there is still a lack of this facility. So as we are now engaging to rely more on technology rather than labor, so Mr. DIY should opt for this action into their planning. So by having a robotic facility, it is expected that it will cut down the cost of labor and also bring more effectiveness into the industry. Okay, that's all from me. As the conclusion, so the main issue is the expansion plan of Mr. DIY, where it wants to open 120 more stores in Thailand and bringing the total of more than 500 stores this year. And Mr. DIY also planning to open a new distribution center in North Thailand this year. So after we conduct the analysis, for example, the external factor analysis, so Mr. DIY is actually effective in exploiting the opportunities and defending itself from the threats. And the other analysis, such as the QSPM analysis, also shows that the best strategy for Mr. DIY is to implement market development, which is aligned with their expansion plan. So, and all of these are supported by the strong financial position that Mr. DIY has. Even though the whole world is actually facing with COVID-19 pandemic, where a lot of business are collapsing. That's all from us. Thank you.